Hi, my name is Lona Muthania Ochido, and I'm making it one of my life's mission to demystify the speech therapy field and to empower more parents on what they can start to do in order to optimize their child's communication outcomes. So whether you want your child to talk more or talk better, learn better, and overall optimize their potential. So stay tuned and feel free to send in any topics on speech and language development you'd like for me to tackle. To kickstart the series, I am tackling a really popular question. Why is my 2-year-old or 3-year-old or 4-year-old not talking? Each time I'm asked this question, I can understand a parent's desperation to find out what could be causing their child's language delay. But I also, without evaluating the child, find it very difficult to say specifically what could be making their child not achieve this relatively easy milestone. And yes, easy is relative. So I have to start by saying there are many factors that can cause your child not to speak at the expected times. And which are these expected times, you may ask? At 12 to 15 months, we expect your child to have between 3 and 5 words. So mama, baba, mama, mwawa, whatever you've taught or you've repeated over. At 18 months, we expect your child to have between 25 to 50 words. And at 2 years, we expect your child to have between 200 and 300 words. At 3 years, 1,000 words. And at 4 years, over 1,500 words. And what are these red flags? One of them is birth trauma. A majority actually of children that I see at the clinic that are delayed in their language skills have had some kind of birth trauma. So birth trauma could be mom had prolonged labor, obstructed labor. It probably required an emergency C-section, or there was some kind of difficulty during the delivery or the laboring. So baby, yes, was delivered safely, but perhaps did not cry right away or needed to be attended to, was in an incubator if maybe they were preterm, or they had to go into the nursery or had to be given oxygen. A good indicator, obviously, if you've had prolonged labor or obstructed labor, or the baby was in some kind of distress, the fetus, then that could be considered birth trauma. A good indicator would be the APGAR score. So the APGAR score is a score that the doctor gives the baby at 1 minute after delivery and again at 5 minutes after delivery. So this score is usually out of 10. So if your child scored poorly on their APGAR score, and I should actually know what the 5 things that they measure in the APGAR score. So it's a score out of 10, and each of the 5 things that are measured they're given a score of 2. So if your child measures really well or scores really well, then they get a full 2. So one of those areas is respiration. So did your baby have difficulty breathing? So if they didn't have any difficulty breathing, then they get a 2. What about their tone? Did they have a lustrous cry? That's another element, and you get it out of 2. So all 5 things, and I forget the other 2, but I'll check them down on the notes. All those, if they scored well, then they should get a 10 out of 10. But if they didn't score well, they might get something below 5. Anything over 7 is usually pretty good. And the good thing is that if they score poorly in the first minute, it is usually repeated again in the 5th minute, and it's done. So all you have to do is ask, your the person that delivered the baby, what was my baby's APGAR score, and they'll let you know. But again, things like a cry, if you heard your baby cry right away, then there's no difficulty there. They cried right away. So yeah, so birth trauma can cause a myriad of issues. So if a child has had trouble or traumatic entry to life, to the world, they might then have delay in achieving some of their milestones. So the second thing that is a red flag for why your child might not be talking at the time that we expect them to talk is that they have what's now referred to as global developmental delays. So it means all their milestones, the motorical ones, so holding up their neck, sitting up, walking, they've all been delayed. So if they're delayed, then we expect then that even the talking is going to be delayed. So that's something to watch out for. What could cause global delay? A number of factors. Yes, birth trauma could be one of them, but those are things that we can tackle later on. So just keep checking out this series and we'll tackle that as well. Another red flag is the environment. Actually, before I talk about the environment, I'll talk about another factor or another red flag, and that is if your child has had frequent ear infections or medical issues, difficulties, either if they've been hospitalized and or they have had lots of colds and flus or ear infections. Now, not all children complain about an ear infection, but if your child is always fluey or always having a runny nose or having difficulty sometimes breathing or is a noisy sleeper, then that could point to the possibility that they might have or they might be retaining fluid in the ears. And I'll tackle the issue about fluid in the ears in the rest of our series, so you check them out at your convenience. So if they've had chronic or fluid issues, it just means that they're not getting a clear enough sound signal, which could be impacting on them developing language or meeting that milestone in a timely manner. In my experience, what I find could be the cause for a child's delayed language skill is the environment. So by environment, I mean the home environment, the type or quality of caregiving or caregivers that are looking after this child. So often what I find is that if your child has been overexposed to screens, then this could be a real cause for why they're delayed in achieving their speech and language milestones. And so I feel that generally, if your child is overexposed to screens, they tend to be understimulated as well. So not enough interaction that is taking place. You're probably not having to talk to them as often because they're probably really engaged, or not wanting, to be interacted with. But this can cause, and usually I find to be true, that it could be the reason why your child is delayed in talking. So there you have it. Those are the red flags or some probable causes for why your child could be delayed in talking. Please check out some of our other resources to learn more about any of the new topics that this series has raised for you. Thank you, as always, for listening.